Building a REST API using code generators in a NestJS application. Hi everyone, Anton here, welcome to my coding channel where we explore the most efficient ways to develop web applications. In this video we are going to initialize a REST API using code generators for a NestJS application and explore some caveats of using the code generators in case if your server is a part of a project built on NPM workspaces like in our case. This application is available on the public repository as always. The link to this code is also in the video description. Of course, give your start to this repository when you will check it out. So now let's define our REST API. When you are using code generators for NestJS, you want to use it from a directory of your server. So in our case, we are going to switch to the directory to our server workspace, which is apps server. Now the actual command to generate the API is nest generate, or its short alias G, resource or just res, and name of the resource. Actually, NestJS CLI suggests us to name the resources in the plural form, like here, to-dos. However, in my opinion, it would be better to name it in a singular form. So we will name it just to-do. Also, what I will do is I will skip the initialization of the test files because they provide very little value to us. Now, the type of the transport layer we will want to REST API. Also, why don't we generate the entry points? And as you can see, now it is installing some additional NPM packages, so we will just interrupt it with Ctrl+C. Why did we do that? It is because the Nest generation CLI will want to install these dependencies right here under our server directory, because it is not aware that we are working within the project with NPM workspaces. And to save the time, we can just interrupt this command at this point. But to finish actually this process, we will need to come back to our project root and run the npm install command. Okay, so dependencies have been installed. If we now take a look at our source folder in our server, we will see that there are a couple of files generated for us. As you can see, they all are named in the singular form: to-do controller, to-do module, etc. If you have some thoughts about how is it better to name the REST resources, I mean in singular or plural form, write it in the comment down below. So now we would want to test out whether it is working or not in our browser. So for this, let's start our application. For this, we will switch to the server folder once again and run the npm start command. And while it is starting, we are going to open our browser at localhost 3001. Here is our server. And if we take a look at our to-do controller, it has the path to-do, so let's check it out. Alright, we even have a hint what this endpoint is meant for. Actually, this endpoint is, this is it, find all. If we take a look at to-do service, this action returns all to-do, so the find all method This is what we are seeing here. So, alright, since we have successfully generated our REST API, why don't we just commit it now? Alright, so now our API is working, but we will now want this endpoint to return some actual data for our client to do application. Since we don't have the database to fetch the data from, we will have to initialize some data fixtures. And in order to initialize the fixtures, we will want to define the interface of a to-do. So for this we have in the folder entities the file to-do entity. First of all, we won't need it to be a class, we will prefer it to be interface. Also, as we could see, the NestJS has some sort of naming convention for files and for classes and other instances. For example, to-do controller, to-do service. So for the to-do entity, let's enforce the NestJS to follow its own naming convention. Alright, so now from our client application, we remember that a to-do has two properties. One of them is label, which is string, and another one is whether it is done or not, and it is respectively boolean. So now with this interface we can define some data fixture. For this we are going to define another folder within the to-do directory and create a file for our fixtures. Here I am writing to-dos in plural since we are going to store an array of data here. Let's define that our fixture is going to be of the type of to-do entity array. We are going to export it right away and to define some of the data here. Done by default, let it be false. And right, what are we doing now? Initialize NestJS server. For example, the second task for us is generate to-do REST API and for example, connect database. This task we have already done in the previous video. By the way, check it out if you are curious how did we install this server. This task about generating to-do we are also going to define as two in advance for ourselves. So, alright. Now, with this entity, we have some demo data for our application. So let's try to render it here inside our endpoint. So as we have already explored, this is our endpoint. Let's define that we are going to expect the to-do entity array from it. And to satisfy this condition right away, we are going to return the to-dos fixture. And what are we seeing in the browser now? Alright, so now we are already seeing the JSON data with our three items that we have just defined. So with this done, we can make our next commit. Alright, so now what you want to do is to like this video up and subscribe to my channel, because in the future videos I will show you how to connect our NestJS server to a database in order to finally work with real data, not with just fixtures, how to fetch the data from the server by our client, and many other useful things. You certainly don't want to miss those out. My name is Anton. Don't stop coding, don't stop growing.